I wasn't looking for lost civilizations. I want to be clear about that. I was researching sea level data, geological surveys, the kind of dry technical material that puts most people to sleep, coastline regression charts, bathymetric maps of continental shelves, the record of how much ocean has risen since the last ice age and how fast and what it swallowed on the way up. And then I found something in the sonar data that made me stop scrolling. A shape on the ocean floor that the ocean floor doesn't make. Go look at it yourself. Search for the Yonaguni monument. Pull up the sonar imaging. Pull up the dive footage. You don't need a geology degree. You need eyes. What you'll see is a massive stone structure sitting 25 meters below the surface of the Pacific Ocean, off the southern coast of Yonaguni, the westernmost inhabited island of Japan. Flat platforms, right-angle steps, terraces carved in uniform heights, channels that run in straight lines, walls that meet at corners so precise you could hang a picture frame on them. The structure extends over 100 meters across the seabed. It has features that divers have described as staircases, as drainage systems, as ceremonial platforms, as a road that leads to a vanishing point in the deeper water. And the last time any of it was above the surface of the ocean was roughly 10,000 years ago. I need you to hold that number, 10,000 years, because that number doesn't just predate the construction timeline we've been given, it detonates it. 10,000 years ago, there was no Sumer, no Egypt, no Indus Valley, no Mesopotamia, no civilization anywhere on Earth that the official timeline recognizes as capable of cutting stone at this scale. According to everything you were taught, every human being alive at that time was a nomadic hunter-gatherer. No agriculture, no permanent settlements, no engineering knowledge, no social organization complex enough to quarry and shape a monument of this size. And yet there it sits, on the ocean floor, waiting for someone to explain it. The official explanation arrived quickly. Too quickly, if you ask me. The mainstream archaeological establishment looked at the Yonaguni monument and declared it natural. Sandstone fractures along straight lines, mudstone cleaves at right angles, tectonic activity produces flat surfaces. The human eye sees patterns where none exist. Case closed. Move along. This raises a simple but critical question. If the explanation is that simple, why hasn't the case been studied with the rigor it deserves? Because here's what troubles me. The declaration of natural origin preceded the comprehensive study, not followed it, preceded it. The structure was categorized before it was fully mapped. The conclusion was reached before the evidence was assembled. And once the conclusion was institutional, the funding for investigation evaporated. You don't fund expeditions to study natural rock. You don't publish papers about geology doing geology things. You don't build careers on confirming that a rock is a rock. The dismissal didn't just end the debate. It prevented the research that might have settled it. But not everyone accepted the dismissal. Masaki Kimura, a marine geologist at the University of the Ryukyus, has spent over 2 decades mapping the Yonaguni structure in painstaking detail. Go read his work, seriously. Pull up his surveys. He has documented tool marks on the stone surfaces. He has identified a triangular depression with symmetrical walls that he argues no natural process can produce. He has found what appears to be a carved face on one section of rock. He has measured the step heights and found uniformity that exceeds what natural fracturing produces. He has mapped spatial relationships between features that suggest deliberate architectural planning. Kimura isn't a YouTuber with a theory. He's a professor with decades of peer-reviewed publication. And the response from mainstream archaeology has been neither refutation nor engagement. It's been silence. His work isn't cited. His evidence isn't directly addressed. His conclusions exist in a professional vacuum, not because they've been disproven, but because they imply something the standard timeline cannot absorb. The silence was deafening. Now here's where I need you to follow the thread, because Yonaguni isn't alone. And this is where the natural formation explanation starts to collapse under its own weight. Within the waters surrounding Yonaguni and the nearby islands of the Ryukyu archipelago, divers have documented multiple submerged structures, not one formation, multiple, separated by kilometers, at different depths, displaying the same geometric characteristics: flat surfaces, right angles, stepped terraces, post holes, channels. Pull up the dive logs. Look at the photographs from Karama, from Aguni, from Chatan. Each site, individually, could be dismissed as geological coincidence. Together, across a wide geographic area, displaying the same construction vocabulary, the coincidence explanation requires more faith than the alternative. The pattern repeats with unsettling precision, and not just in Japan. Off the coast of western India, in the Gulf of Khambhat, sonar surveys in 2001 detected geometric structures on the seabed at 40 meters depth. Dredging recovered pottery fragments, carved wood, human teeth. Carbon dating placed the organic material at approximately 9,500 years ago, 5,000 years before the Indus Valley civilization, 5,000 years before anything the official timeline says should exist in that region. Off western Cuba, also in 2001, sonar detected what researchers described as pyramidal structures, rectangular buildings, and a planned urban layout sitting at over 600 meters depth. 600 meters. The last time that seabed was dry land, the Ice Age was still in full force. The site generated media coverage, brief institutional curiosity, and then vanished from scientific discourse. No comprehensive follow-up, no published study, nothing. Off the coast of Malta, submerged formations have been identified that appear to extend the megalithic temple complexes already on the islands. Temples that are among the oldest freestanding structures on Earth. The submerged portions sit at depths corresponding to sea levels 10,000 years ago, as if the temples we can see on land are only the parts that the ocean didn't reach. Off Greece, off Egypt, off Okinawa, off the southeastern coast of India, where fishermen have reported stone structures visible in shallow water for generations. Wherever anyone has bothered to point a sonar array or send a diver down to a submerged coastline that was above water during the Ice Age, they find anomalies, geometric shapes, right angles, patterns that nature can produce individually, but that cluster with a consistency no geological model predicts. Count the sites. Seriously. Make a list. Japan, India, Cuba, Malta, Greece, Egypt. Different oceans, different continents, different geological substrates, the same geometric anomalies, the same depths corresponding to the same window of submersion, the same official response, natural formation, insufficient evidence, not worth investigating. Move along. As if they were following instructions they didn't fully understand. Now step back and ask the question that connects all of them. Where did people live 10,000 years ago? The official answer is inland. River valleys, fertile plains, the places where the archaeological evidence has been found, because those are the places archaeologists have looked, because those are the places that are above water and accessible to people with shovels and brushes and institutional funding. The entire timeline of human civilization, every date, every milestone, every first that your textbook celebrates was constructed from evidence found on dry land. But think about where humans actually concentrate. Think about where every major city on Earth sits today, on coastlines, on river mouths, on harbors and deltas, and the edges where fresh water meets salt. This isn't modern behavior. This is primate behavior. This is species deep. Humans have always clustered at the water's edge because that's where the resources converge. Fish, shellfish, fresh water, trade routes, transportation. The coast is where humans go. The coast is where humans have always gone, and 10,000 years ago, the coast was somewhere else. Somewhere that is now 20, 40, 60, 100 meters underwater. The Ice Age locked so much water in glacial ice that sea levels were over 100 meters lower than they are today. The coastlines extended kilometers beyond their current positions. The continental shelves, which are now shallow seabed, were dry land, habitable land. The land where, if humans behaved 10,000 years ago the way they've behaved for the entire rest of recorded history, the densest populations would have lived. The deeper I went, the more the absence of pre-Ice Age civilization started to look not like evidence of its non-existence, but like evidence of where it existed, on coastlines that are now underwater, in settlements that are now seabed, around harbors that are now submerged formations that sonar picks up and geologists dismiss as natural, and nobody funds the research to determine which explanation is actually true. We've searched 30% of the Earth's surface and declared the search complete. Now pull up one more thing. Pull up a map of flood myths, not one culture's flood story, all of them. Plot them geographically. The Epic of Gilgamesh from Mesopotamia, Genesis from the Hebrew tradition, the Matsya Purana from Hindu scripture, the Deucalion myth from Greece, the Nuwa stories from China, Aboriginal Australian stories of rising seas that swallowed the land, indigenous North American traditions of a great inundation, South American accounts, Pacific Island accounts, African accounts, every inhabited continent, every major cultural tradition, stories of a flood that destroyed an earlier world and forced humanity to begin again. We treat these as myths, as primitive attempts to explain rainfall and river flooding, as allegories for spiritual transformation, as anything other than what they might actually be. Testimony, oral history, transmitted across hundreds of generations with the same fidelity that Indigenous Australians used to preserve accurate descriptions of coastlines that have been underwater for 8,000 years, a fidelity that has been scientifically verified. The flood myths aren't metaphor. The sea level data is measured fact. Between 15,000 and 7,000 years ago, the ocean rose over 100 meters. It swallowed millions of square kilometers of inhabited coastline. It would have destroyed every coastal settlement, every harbor, every monument built overlooking the sea. And the people who survived, the people who retreated inland as the waters rose, generation after generation, watching the ocean consume the world their grandparents had known. What would they have told their children? What would those children have told their children? What story would have survived 1,000 retellings across 10,000 years? A story about a flood that drowned everything. The official explanation collapses here, because you cannot simultaneously accept the sea level data, which is undisputed geological fact, and maintain that no significant human construction existed on coastlines that were above water for tens of thousands of years. Either humans didn't live on Ice Age coastlines, which contradicts everything we know about human settlement patterns, or they did live there, and everything they built is now underwater. Those are the only two options, and the second option means that the timeline of civilization isn't wrong because it overestimates human capability. It's wrong because it only looked where the evidence hadn't been drowned. Go back to Yonaguni. Look at the sonar data again. Look at those right angles, those uniform steps, those flat platforms extending across the seabed in a geometry that nature can theoretically produce, but that appears site after site, ocean after ocean, with a consistency that theory alone cannot explain. Look at it and ask yourself whether the honest scientific response is natural formation, case closed, or whether the honest response is, we don't know and we should find out. Because here's what I keep coming back to. We have the technology, side-scan sonar, LiDAR bathymetry, remotely operated submersibles, diving technology that can put trained archaeologists on submerged sites for hours at a time. We have every tool necessary to conduct a comprehensive archaeological survey of the world's submerged coastlines, and we haven't done it. Not because it's impossible, because it's expensive. Because the institutional framework of archaeology was built for dry land and has never been restructured for a planet that is 70% water. Because the careers and the funding and the publications all flow through a system that has already decided when civilization began and where, and that system has no incentive to look in places where the answer might be different. The deeper I went, the more the ocean started to look like the largest unexcavated archaeological site on Earth. Not the deep ocean, the shallow shelves, the drowned coastlines, the places where the temples would be if temples existed before the timeline says they should. And at Yonaguni, 25 meters down, something sits in the dark water with right angles and uniform steps and flat platforms that extend across the seabed like the foundation of a building that the ocean swallowed before history began. Something that a marine geologist has spent his career documenting and that the archaeological establishment has spent the same career ignoring. I'm not telling you there was an advanced global civilization before the Ice Age. I'm telling you there's a structure on the ocean floor that nobody can explain, surrounded by similar structures across multiple oceans that nobody has funded the research to investigate, in waters that covered coastlines where humans almost certainly lived during a period of catastrophic sea level rise that every culture on Earth remembers as a flood that destroyed the world. I'm telling you the ocean floor hasn't been searched, and I'm asking why not. I'm asking what's down there that we're not supposed to find, what timeline would have to be rewritten, what textbooks would have to be recalled, what institutions would have to admit that they built an entire chronology of human civilization on the 30% of the Earth's surface that happened to stay dry. The next time you stand at the edge of the ocean, look out at the water and ask yourself, what's underneath it? Not fish, not sand, not geology doing geology things. What structures, what foundations, what evidence of who we were before the flood that every civilization remembers but no institution investigates? Once you see it, you can't unsee it.